Let's go straight to our next guest and talk about just extraordinary stories involving prisoners being released after serving just 20% of their sentence. Yes, really, that is genuinely being discussed. Let's talk to Vanessa Frake. She's a former prison governor. She's also author of The Governor, My Life Inside Britain's Most Notorious Prisons. That includes being governor of HMP Wormwood Scrubs. Good morning to you, Vanessa.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, these are the sort of stories I look at. I think, let me just check. Is that April the 1st? Does that come round really, really much quicker than I'd expected it to do? Because it's bad enough, I've always thought, that prisoners should be released 2/3 through their sentence. I've always thought, well, for good behaviour, we'll take 10% off max, or just add on for bad behaviour. But then it became 2/3. Then it was half. Now it's 40%. But they are apparently genuinely looking at 20%. Just fifth of their sentence being served before prisoners are released. Is this as insane to you as a professional in this field as it is to the rest of us?
Well, I mean, the whole prison system at the moment is quite frankly insane. So, nothing surprises me at this precise moment in time with regard to prisons. But, we've always had the HDC, which is the home detention curfew. And that was designed to try and get prisoners used to living back in the community. And the criteria for that is quite strict. They've got to have an eligible address. It's got to be checked out. They go through like a risk management board to see if they've had previous convictions for sexual crimes, violent crimes, or they're convicted of violent crimes, etc., etc. I mean, there's a long list. It would take me ages to read it out. But so that the HDC, the eligibility was 25% or 28 days, whichever the greater was. Yeah. And I think what they actually mean now is they're looking at reducing that to 20%. And I don't know how many days that'd work out. But the problem with that is that puts a huge pressure on our probation service, because all of those addresses that those prisoners are going to fall into at 20% need to be checked out. They need to be made sure that they are suitable to release prisoners to. That, one of the criteria is it's got to have electricity and running water. It's not some sort of squat.
Well, presumably also that they're not living, with a drug dealer or something like that. I mean,
exactly, and also all the addresses, not only have the addresses got to be checked out, but the people who live in those addresses have got to be checked out.
It's a lot of paperwork and a lot of fieldwork. But we know the probation service is already overstretched. Some of the concern about the early release schemes is already going ahead, this month and next month. Already the probation service, we know they've been preparing for this for a long time, but they were overstretched before. They can't suddenly miracle up, hundreds or even thousands more probation workers. They're already overstretched. We already know an awful lot of people saying, prisoners saying they're actually, they come out, they're not getting help. They're not being monitored. Yeah. What happens if you break your home release scheme? Basically, presumably you're tagged. If you breach that, what actually happens realistically?
Well, then the company that monitors the tags informs the police that they've breached usually they're on a 12-hour curfew. So usually it's from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. There may be some exceptions to that. But if they breach that, then the monitoring company informs the police, who issue an arrest warrant. They're picked up. Hopefully they can find them, and they're brought back to jail to finish their sentence.
And then do they then serve their full sentence? Sorry for asking this stupid question, Vanessa.
Yeah, far more complicated than that. No, it would probably go to, if it was, say, a 12-month sentence, they'd probably go to the 6-month mark. And
then they'd be given another go, and then if they breach that, and then so basically they go in and out, huge amounts of admin, huge cost to the taxpayer of that, and they're on the streets. And there'll be many people. Yeah, I accept people who've done something wrong. They've been convicted of a crime and they want to go back on the straight and narrow. But also, if you're free from 7 till 7 a.m, well, plenty of good robbing time and drug dealing time as well in that. This is the thing. Look, you've worked, in some of our most notorious prisons. Wormwood Scrubs. You've worked with a lot of female prisoners, and we have far fewer of those, the likes of, Rosemary West and Myra Hindley, for goodness sake. You dealt with the worst of the worst. In your experience, as someone who isn't sort of, just sort of, I don't know, imbued with this sort of liberal lefty sort of like, oh, if only we didn't lock people away, the world would be a better place sort of ideology. Does any of this stuff work? Should we be sending people to prison? Does prison work? Could it work? What's the solution?
I mean, the stats are there, Julia. You know, short, sharp shock treatments do not work. It makes people resentful, and basically a prison needs time to work with prisoners, and a short sentence is very difficult to work with prisoners.
And when you say short sentence,
to address their offending behaviour.
When you say short sentence,
12 months, under 12 months.
Under 12 months. So there's no point sending someone to prison for under 12 months.
I don't think so. I think what would be better would, unless it's obviously a violent crime, let's get that right. But I think what would be better would be to have that person doing something useful within the community. You know, look at this grandmother who got 15 months. She was the carer of her husband for writing a really stupid statement on Facebook, which I am
during
sure
the riots.
that more than anything now. But, you know, we've taken her away from her home. So now her husband's got no carers. So every day carers are going to have to go in and look at and care for him. When hopefully they'll manage to keep their home. But, you know, wouldn't she be better off of working in the community, going in and working with Muslims and finding out the effects of her words from Muslims? You know, wouldn't that be better? Because I can guarantee she's not going to come out of jail in
feeling happy. I don't mind people going into jail and feeling resentful. If they've committed a crime that is worthy of going to prison, I don't think that was worthy of going to prison. I agree with you on that case, although it was a crime and what she did was wrong. But again, it's so many people who commit numerous crimes that, you know, which do have a massive impact on people, don't get sent to prison. But if we're just going to say you only go to prison for over 12 months, the reality is prisoners now are often locked up 23 hours a day. They're not doing education. They're not doing rehabilitation. It's easier to get drugs in prison than anywhere else because they can charge a higher price behind bars. I mean, I'm not even sure that argument then even works for people serving any time behind bars. Why don't we just give up and just have a free-for-all? That's what it feels like. Maybe we should do what the Colombians
do and withdraw the staff and let their prisoners look after themselves.
Yeah,
I mean, have a perimeter. But look, you know, the prison service is broken. It's short of staff, so therefore purposeful activity, offending programs, all of that gets cancelled. So, you know, we lock up the most in Western Europe. We have the worst offending rates in Western Europe. What does that say to everybody? It says prison doesn't work. You know, personally,
I think we don't send people to prison soon enough for serious crimes. That's why I think prison doesn't work.
Well, I think you know, a lot of it is education. You know, when I was at Scrubs, we used to send people into schools and talk to school children of 15, 16-year-olds about crime and about the effects of crime on them, on their family. We used to talk about prisons. None of that happens anymore. You know, so, you know, you start off on this little crime merry-go-round and it just gets bigger and bigger. And once you get on there, it's very difficult to get off unless you have the input and the resources to help people.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, I just think there's so little deterrent now because people aren't worried about going to prison. They don't think they'll be caught. They don't think they'll be prosecuted. If they are convicted, they don't think they'll go to prison or they'll be let out very early. There is no deterrent anymore. People aren't being kept off the streets long enough to actually sort of protect the people, and they're not being rehabilitated. On that basis, I mean, it's an abject failure. Vanessa, so appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us, your expertise. Vanessa Frake, a former prison governor and also author of The Governor, My Life Inside Britain's Most Notorious Prisons, include Wormwood Scrubs.